Hey pilots, Drain Man here, and today I've got a very special video. In today's video, we are continuing on with the How to Build a Monster Drone playlist. It's got these two logos that you saw pop up right here, and that's how you know that you're inside of the playlist, is because you're following the logos. In this video, we are continuing on with that, and if you did not catch the beginning of it, I have the link down there. Go check it out, start over at the beginning, and enjoy the whole show. All right, let's go. We're gonna go ahead and get the camera connected. We've got the VTX mounted. I would have liked to have soldered the wires for the VTX, you know, now and not have to try to struggle while it's inside of there, but you win some, you lose some, you know? All right, for the camera, fortunately, it's just a plug, so I'll unplug it to be able to do my wiring. And cameras are very simple. You've usually, unless you've got camera control, or if you don't have a voltage sensor and you're using VSEN, what we got here is positive, ground, and video. I will go ahead and strip them, tin them, and solder them. Now on this flight controller, all flight control, not all, but flight controllers will label them differently, or label them how they want to label them. And they've chosen to put VI, and that stands for video in, and other companies will use other stuff when doing that. I'm also doing a really good job trying to make sure that nothing blocks my SD card. That way, if I need to do any debugging or anything like that, I won't have that messing with me. I'm gonna use green because I want it to be a little bit different than the rest of the colors. I'm gonna go ahead and tin the R4 pad because that is one of our most important pads, and the reason why is because all of our telemetry is going to be coming from our ESCs, and this is where we are going to be doing our ESC communication, is right from there. So that is why I went ahead and connected that, and that's going to shoot down. And I went with green just because this is the bottom of the flight controller. So when I mount the bottom of the flight controller upwards, I'm not going to be able to see the pads, so I'm going to have to use the color codes that I have laid out for myself so that I know what is what. So if you're doing this, make sure you're doing the same thing. Do not come down with 4 yellow wires and not know which one is which. Let's go ahead and solder the VTX to the quadcopter. That's not going to be easy, and we're going to end up like this, so we need to make sure that we flop it down, solder, and then it'll fold up. So we're going to do like a folding motion. So these wires are going to be connected this way, folding up, and then the whole canopy is going to be folding down, causing these wires to fold this way. So we're going to have quite a bit going on here. So whenever you're dealing with smart audio, you always solder it to the TX. Now we need to go ahead and tin them. So yellow to video. Boom. And white is our smart audio to the smart audio pad. Now we need to go ahead and measure and cut our ground. It's in a downward motion. Now we just need to mount this guy, and some of my wires are going this way, some are going that way, and some are going that way. Now we have to remember that we have the tip of the screw from our VTX mounting screws, which really isn't a part of this. We kind of invented that as we went along, so we need to be mindful of that. So I'm going to double check that. Let's take a look. So when it's closed, all you'll see is the 4 pins, the button head screws. But what's really going on up under there is the flight controllers right there. So there she is. Like we talked about, the VTX requires more than 7 volts. So I'm gonna give it 12. Okay, so now we have power to our VTX. It's time to go ahead and connect all of our motors and everything else. Now my motors are not going to be in the right places, and that's okay. We'll deal with that in beta flight. If you're wanting to learn how to remap your motors, I have a video on that. I will link that down in the video description for you guys. We are going to do it in this video, but I'm not going to be descriptive by any means. My goal is to get this thing running. Now we want to be sure that we don't have a ton of extra wire, but at the same time we don't want to end up cutting one of these too short. That will just put us in a bad spot. So the last one is our Esc Telemetry. And that wire goes right there. So we'll trim it just a bit. So as far as connecting everything from our PDB to our flight controller, we're done. We still need to get our crossfire in, and that's going to require a connection to the PDB, and I'll do it right here so we're not going far. I am going to check now. Yeah, so we have a 5 volt in the ground. I'll use that to feed it, and then our RX and our TX for our UART for communication is right here, so that'll just have to run across the top. I would like to feed it under the bottom, but I'm not going to risk it. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting on heat shrink over the wire that I can slide back forward after I've made my connection. It's unfortunate, but I did not have any wire this size and color, this amount of length. Not sure if you can see that, but I was able to successfully connect the wires. I'm going to give them a little pull just to make sure they're strong. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide over my heat shrink, and then I'll heat it up. Alright, so with the heat shrink nice and hot, I got a nice strong connection. I don't really care for the color in between the two wires, but that ain't going to hurt nobody. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a twist there, and that's completely open. So when I close, everything will just, scrunch up a bit. This is our camera plug. That's going to go to our camera. All of our other wires are tucked nice and neat. Now I'm going to go ahead and solder up the power to my crossfire right here. And then I need to heat shrink it and mount the antennas. We have 2 different antennas. We have one for our VTX, which we are going to mount right here, and then we have one for our crossfire, which I'm going to mount over here. Alright, let me grab my antennas and a little bit of heat shrink for the crossfire. Alright pod, so now we need to go ahead and get our antenna put on. I am rolling with the TBS Crossfire Immortal T, and this is the V2. It's a sharp looking antenna. I do prefer the traditional antenna that comes with it, and that's because on the 5-inch quads, I'm always chewing these antennas up. I mean, they get frayed big time. But there is a way to fix that, and if you're curious, I've got a video on how to fix that. I'll put that down in the video description. Alright, now I need to go ahead and slip my heat shrink on over. Okay, so the UFL is now connected. I'm going to try to feed this around without it popping back off. There we go. And then I need to go ahead and shrink this. Okay, so I used my hot air station to go ahead and shrink this heat shrink on. The next thing I need to do is I need to prepare a little bit of double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to use that to get it stuck right here. And then we've got to find a way to kind of loop the antenna so that this will mount without pushing our crossfire all over the place. Now, quite possibly, I need to not stick it dead on. Oh, don't stick yet. I didn't say to stick yet. I think we pulled it off. Alright, now I need to go ahead and zip tie my antenna, and I want to do that using these holes right here. I'm also going to use blue zip ties because I want to match my theme. I have pink too, but we've got a lot of pink already, so I'm going to use blue. If I end up zip tying anything else, I'll use pink. Alright, so I'm going to place them first because I want it to be symmetrical in the amount of tightness. And I can imagine if I began to tighten too much, it would then throw everything off. Look at that. Not going to go nowhere. And the cool thing is, the way that this is, the geometry won't allow it to ever fall out of there. So we won't have to worry about that. Okay. And now we will tuck those up under there. And there she is. Now with everything connected except for the camera, which is going to be easy peasy. Bam. And all of our wires are pretty much under, tucked, good to go. Our Unify is there looking good. Okay, so I went ahead and found some washers. They're not very big. They're very, very small. You probably can't even see them. But just enough to take the pressure off the carbon just a little bit. Alright, let's go ahead and I'm going to plug in the camera. Boom. And then I will drop it down here. And now this part's going to be hard. I'm going to have to juggle this while trying to put spacers and a screw through this. So I'm going to take the screw first. I'll take the spacer next. I'm going to push the screw through, and it's gonna be a tough job here. Wow, that thing is holding super strong, and I've only done one side. So as a pain of a neck as it is, it's actually a pretty good design. Okay, I have successfully gotten all four in. I would like to show you guys what that looks like, if you can see them. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to take this and we need to push this through here and spin it, and then we need to attach an antenna to it. I'm just gonna go with the old school Triumph. It's a very good, reliable antenna. It's not too bulky, but yet not too thin that it's not giving you what you need. Alright, looks like there's some play in here, which is not good. We don't want that. So I'm going to unscrew it. And they have washers. So I'm going to put a washer over it. That should help us make contact. Already instantly tighter. Okay. Now I would have liked to have had something to put some screws on, but it's just 3D printed, so there's not. Alright, that is tight. And that is going to sit right here. Like that. So, and then that will plug into there. All right, pilots, we have reached the finish line. We have just about one step left. Well, two steps. Well, never mind. We still got a little ways to go. But As far as the building portion of this drone, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to hook up our power cables. So if I open the hood just like that, we've got to connect power and ground to the PDB, because that's what's going to supply voltage to everything. After that, we also have to put special connectors onto our batteries, because this does not operate with the traditional XT60 connector. Then from there, we need to build a connector that is going to allow our batteries with the special connectors to be able to charge on our chargers that we use every day. After that, we can then take the quad into beta flight, get this thing set up, and then we'll take her for a spin. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our power leads put on here. And that's what these little rubber grommets for, if you were wondering all along. Why did we get so far and not use these? Were they just for looks? No. You were right. They actually serve a purpose. And what we're going to do is we are going to connect a ground from here and a positive from here. That way we can evenly distribute the power. We could put both on one side, but that's a lot of power to put on one side, on top of the fact that these wires are going to be huge. So this cable right here is 12 gauge, which we've gone about as big as we can and still have mobility with our wires and be able to make them work. But when you're talking about your power lead, we are going to push the bar all the way. We are going to use 10 gauge wire, and that is this stuff here. And as you can see, it's freaking huge. So what we want to do is, I want to connect ground here, so I've got to get that like that. We'll have to feed it through this hole, and then we'll wrap it around for connection. So we're going to do our ground on this side, and then we need to do our positive on that side. Alright, so there is our two wires, and then back here in the end, we will solder on our connectors. We are not putting on regular old connectors. We are going to be putting on AS150 AMAS connectors. And these are actually single connectors, unlike an XT60 where both are together. And it's very important how we solder these, because we are going to be soldering in series. So we actually need to put on these male and female connectors in series so that they'll work properly. Now there's something else too that you might not know about these connectors, and that is why I'm using them. And that is this little rubber ring right here. I'm not sure if you can see it. Well, it's more than just a rubber ring. There's actually a device inside of here of some sort. I don't know exactly what it is, but it is an anti-spark connector. So when we connect our quad, we're going to plug one in, we'll plug the next in, and when we plug that last one in, we need to make sure that it's that connector, so that way it'll stop the spark. Alright, let's go ahead and do it. So this is what is going to go on our quadcopter, and I'm going to go ahead and set these aside for right now, and this is going to go on our battery. Now there is two batteries, because we are running a 12S, so I've got a 6S and a 6S, and what we're going to do is we are going to put this connector on here, this connector on here, open another pack, and do the exact same thing here. And then that is going to give us what we need for this. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. I do have more than one set of batteries, but right now I'm only going to be putting on one set on camera for you guys, so that way you can see how it's done, and I will do the other set off camera. It does take 2 batteries to fly one pack, so I had to buy a total of 4 batteries to be able to have 2 packs. And these are 3,300 packs, so what that means is I'm running them in series. So I'm going to only get 3,300 milliamp hours, even though I'm going to be having 2 batteries. If you're not sure how all that works, it's look up battery parallel or series, and it'll kind of explain it to you. That's another thing. If you're building your quad to run on parallel battery, make sure that you set up your connectors and run them different than the way that I'm running mine. Okay, so it's very important that you do not cut more than one battery lead at a time. And the reason why is if you cut more than one at a time, you run a risk of touching negative and positive together. So make sure you're only cutting one at a time. And do not cut both in the same snip, because that will be extremely dangerous. So you see how I've only got one open. That means that this black one can't really touch that red one, because that would be extremely bad. Now I also, do not forget, you have to put your sleeve on first and then push it back as far as you can so you don't risk heating it up and melting it. Alright, so grab your strippers and you need to strip your wire. And then give it a twist. And then check your length and see if your length is any good. Alright, so that actually looks perfect, so I'm going to roll with that. Alright, so once again, female is on the red side and male will be on the negative side. Alright, now I can't go too big because I still got to be able to slide it into the connector. And if we take a peek, it looks like it's going to work perfectly. And you also don't want it at any weird angle like this. Now also keep in mind there's threads here. You do not want to hit those threads if you can avoid it. I've actually got my flux syringe, which is what I use when I'm working on the PCB. I'm going to use this and I'm going to inject some into here. Now you want your solder to flow completely liquid, but you don't want to overheat. You got to make sure you're hot enough. Alright, so after you're done, go ahead and give it a quick scrubby scrub. Make sure you clean it up. As you know, I like to clean mine. And after you've done that, take your silicone and push it up far and make sure it's seated all the way. Then take your sleeve and slide your sleeve up, and you're just going to thread it on like you would thread anything else. Now, do not cross thread when you're doing that. And then lock it nice and tight, and you're all set. So that is how you do the positive side. And now I'm going to go ahead and do the negative side, and then we will have one completed battery. Alright, pod, so we are back. I have went ahead and I put the leads on the batteries, as you can see. So I've done two for now. I'm going to do another set off camera later, but I wanted to get two done so that way I'm able to power up the quad and take it for a test flight, make sure everything's working. Well, this is a typical battery connector right here, and this is the male end of an XT60. What I need to do is get that soldered up to these, and then I'll be able to plug my battery into these and plug this into my typical charging cable. If you have a different typical charging cable, feel free to do it to yours. We have this huge 10 gauge wire on here because a lot of amps, a lot of volts, everything's going to be running through that. When we charge, we're not going to be charging at ridiculously high voltage, so it doesn't have to be that thick of wire. So I think this is like 12 gauge or something like that. So it's still thick, but it's just not as thick because we don't need it to be. Now it's important to check your connector, make sure you're connecting to the correct side. Just so you can see what it looks like, that is a completed connector that'll plug in. Next we will do the back side. And that's how you do it. So this is your charging cable. You will just simply take the black and plug it in. Take the red, plug it in. And now you can plug this into the charger and charge your battery. Alright pod, so we've got our batteries ready to go. Now it is time to solder on our power leads to the actual quadcopter so we can plug it in. Earlier we ran it up under and through, and now we need to get it onto the board. Alright, so we have our pad tinned. Wow, that came out really freaking nice. Now I'm gonna get some flux on there. Oh, my flux pen just broke. I didn't even know the flux pens could break. Now that is a nice joint. And next is going to be the ground side. And I just completed the second one. Both of those are done. This build is about to be done. Get alcohol all over. So here's how this works. You've got your two packs. They will go together on, let's say, what they call a battery tray. And I'm thinking I'll run the leads to the outside. So these are this side, these are this side. And then they go up under inside of the quad. Just like that. And they slide forward around to the front. And that right there is about center. So that's where I'm going to be plugging in at. So where do I want these leads when I loop them around to plug in? If I do them at a bad angle, I'm not going to be able to connect. So I'm thinking they need to be about the same length as the ones that are there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut them the same length as the battery leads. So that one is about here. It's about here. Okay pilots, so now we have got everything on here all 100% complete. Everything is soldered up. I've wiped it, I've blown it down, I've made sure that there is no solder balls or no beads of hair, little strips of hair hanging or touching. Everything has been checked and ran through. I have not powered it up yet. I have not checked for continuity. I haven't done any of that yet. I want to apply real quick one last coat of some conformal coating. We take our multimeter, let's put it into continuity mode, and let's check for shorts. Alright, here we go. So I'm going to touch the minus pad or the ground pad, and I'm going to touch a positive pad. And I've got nothing. Let's touch another one. I've got nothing. Now let's touch a positive pad and a positive pad. So that lets us know that we do not have a short circuit. We can go ahead and turn this off. Alright pilots, that is going to do it for the building portion of this quadcopter. It is 100% built and ready to go. It is freaking ginormous and I'm so excited. I can't wait to plug it into the computer, get it all set up, and take it out to the field and see what this thing's gonna fly like. Now, if you guys are unfamiliar with setting these things up, I'm gonna walk you through the whole process, and then what we'll do is we'll even go through the PID tuning portion, because this is gonna be different than a normal 5-inch quadcopter. It is going to fly different, feel different. It's even gonna sound different. And even the props it uses are different. Everything's different. This is a whole different scale. I got 2 days into this thing, but we have made it to the finish line.
Start it?
Woo! Yeah, go ahead. Here we go. I'm freaking out. All right, so look, I actually have to plug negative to positive. You ready? Oh my goodness. All right, here we go. Here's about 50 volts.